Hi guys, welcome to my video. I am so excited to share the 10 books I read in November, so let's get started. The first book I read in November was Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas. This is a reread. I'm just rereading the entire series. So I started with Assassin's Blade, which I rated 5 stars, but I've already talked about that, so let's talk about this. This is about Celaena Sardothien, who is 18 years old. She is the land's best assassin, and at the beginning of this book, she is taken out of a slave camp by the prince and one of the kings. I think it's like the king, I can never remember his title. He's like the best king's guard, pretty much. She's taken out of this camp by them so that she can join this competition to become the king's champion. The king's champion is pretty much just his personal assassin. He just tells them, hey, I want you to kill this person, and then they have to do it. So if she becomes the king's champion, she, after I think maybe 4 or 5 years, she will be freed. But if she does not win, she has to go back to the slave camp. This is truly one of the best series I have ever read. I am obsessed with it. I feel like I'm just going to read this series time and time again and never get tired of it. I gave this one 4 stars. The prequel that I read before this is Assassin's Blade, and she wrote that like many years after she wrote this book. So the writing is just slightly different. You can just tell she wasn't as seasoned of a writer in this book, but it's still so good, and I really love it. I give this 4 stars. Then I started a new series, and that is The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. This was very good. It follows 17-year-old Kiva Meriden. I always read it as Meridian, but it's Meriden. Kiva Meriden, who is a prisoner at this prison. Shocker, I know. But she is what they call the prison healer, and that's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. She just helps the sick people at the prison. And there is a kind of rebel movement going on in this kingdom. This is a fantasy, I should say. So there's a rebel movement going on, and one day the rebel queen actually gets captured and brought into the prison. She is pretty much dying. She's very sick. And Kiva is given the task of keeping this rebel queen alive so that she can endure these trials. I can't remember why they do the trials, but it's basically like these trials that it's completely impossible to actually survive. That's what the rebel queen is supposed to do. And so Kiva has some family that is not in the prison, and they every once in a while will send her little notes just to let her know that she is alive. And when this rebel queen is captured, she gets a note from her family saying, keep the rebel queen alive at all costs, we are coming. And so that is what the story is about. She's just trying to keep this rebel queen alive, and obviously the rebel queen is like dying. She cannot handle these trials, so Kiva herself decides to volunteer as tribute to join these trials, and that's what the book is about. It's very good. I had thought that I guessed like all the plot twists and everything going on with this book, but literally the last sentence, my jaw dropped the floor. It was such a great plot twist, and I'm so excited to read the sequel of this book in December. Oh, I gave this 4 stars. A lot of these books you're gonna already have seen in my 24-hour readathon because I read the majority of these books in that vlog, but I'm just going, if you didn't watch it, I'll recap. Then I read The Nursery by Sylvia Molnar. This is like a women's fiction all about motherhood. It's this woman who has just given birth. The baby is never given a name. She just says, let's call this baby Button. And then the woman herself never gives her name. I think it's because it's like it's showing that she feels as though she has lost herself and her identity once this baby came into the world. It just shows like all the intrusive thoughts that mothers get, like the postpartum depression and just kind of resenting your kid because they took away like the life you used to have. But the ending is very good, and it brings you more hope than the rest of the book does. I loved this so much. Just the whole concept of motherhood is terrifying and intriguing to me, and I would 100% recommend this book. I gave this 4.5 stars. Then I read an entire trilogy this month, and that is the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. I had a really fun time with this. I read this in my 24-hour readathon. So we started out with Once Upon a Broken Heart. This is about Evangeline Fox. She is in love with this man and then finds out that he is actually going to be marrying her stepsister. So she gets the help of the Prince of Hearts, who is called a Fate. And the Fates in this world are basically kind of like these godlike beings. They've just been alive for forever, and they have like certain magics and whatnot. You are never supposed to make a deal with a Fate, but she does. She asks Jax, who is the Prince of Hearts, for help. She says, please stop this wedding. And so he does, but it has some consequences. She has to give Jax 3 kisses of his choosing. The kisses are not with Jax. That's what I always thought it was, but he actually chooses who she kisses, when, where, why, how, all those sorts of things. And it's really fun. I enjoyed this one. I think I gave this one 3.75 stars. And then I read, The Ballad of Never After, and I gave this one 4 stars. And then I finished it off with A Curse for True Love, and I gave this one 4.25 stars. So this one was my favorite. I really enjoyed it. I'm 100% going to be rereading this series at some point because I just know I missed so much since I read it in a 24-hour readathon, and I was kind of just like trying to zoom through it. But I'm gonna read this again, and maybe I'll rate it higher, who knows. Then I continued in the Throne of Glass series with Crown of Midnight. This one is very good still. It's a little bit slower than the rest of the series, but I think it is pretty much just as good, at least for like the first 3 books. I gave this one 4 stars, and the ending is just so good. I love this series. Then we had my only 5-star of the entire month, and that was A Novel Love Story. I loved it so much. I am definitely gonna be rereading this at some point in my life. I enjoyed every second of this. This is by Ashley Poston. The concept of this book is so wonderful. So who's the character's name? Elsie. Okay, so Elsie is in this book club with her best friend, and in this book club they always read like romance novels, and their favorite romance series is, I can't remember what it's called. Something Falls. Anyways, that's besides the point. She really, really loves this certain series. She's reread it 1,000,000 times, and same with her best friend. And then everyone else in the book club also loves this series. Every year, her book club goes on this trip, and they just read a bunch of romance books over the course of like a week. But this year, everyone has something going on, and nobody can make the trip. But Elsie has got some stuff going on in her life, and she just needs to get out of the house and go on a vacation. So she decides to still take the trip that her book club normally takes, but she's the only one going. And on her way there, she gets lost and finds herself in this town, and it may or may not be the town from her favorite romance series. It's so, so good. A lot of people don't like this one because they think it like jumps into the romance too quickly. I do agree with that, but it didn't hinder my reading experience at all. I was just obsessed with this. Every part of it. The concept is just so good. Like, I can't imagine jumping into like ACOTAR, finding myself in Valaris, and God, it's just so good. It's so, so good. I would 100% recommend this book. I clearly loved it. Next, I read World of Wonders. This is just kind of like a memoir slash nonfiction nature writing kind of deal. I don't think this was for me, but I do think it's for a lot of other people. It's definitely written kind of like in poetry, I would say, and that's not my favorite thing. I've never really been a fan of poetry, but I do think this, like, obviously it is highly rated. People love this, so I would still give it a chance if you love nature writing and poetry and stuff. I do love nature writing, so I loved that part of it, and I did like hearing about her background and her story, her struggles, her joys, and things like that, but it just wasn't for me. I am not rating this book because I just feel bad about rating something if I'm not gonna rate it highly. Nonfiction, like memoirs and stuff. But anyways, I did read this. The last book that I read in November was Their Vicious Games. This is by Joelle Wellington. I got this recommendation from Shaughnessy. She always recommends this on her YouTube channel, and so I've been intrigued. And I'm so glad I read this because I loved this. I read that Joelle Wellington wrote this as like a satire. I don't know what it's a satire of exactly, but anyways, just thought I'd throw that out there that it's a satire. So this book is about a girl named Adina Walker. She had gotten into her dream college. I think it was Yale. Anyways, it doesn't matter what school it was. It was an Ivy League. So she had gotten into her dream school and then she got into a fight at school and was kicked out of her dream school. She's really going through it and she doesn't know what to do now because she goes to this like preppy, really nice school with a bunch of rich kids and she's not as rich as them. And so she just doesn't get things as easily as they would. But there is this thing that happens every year called the finals. What is it called? Oh, the finish. So there's this thing that takes place every year called the finish. It is held by this one really wealthy, very well-known family. A couple of the boys she goes to school with. Anyways, so the finish is held by this family, and if you win the finish, basically what happens? I'm not sure exactly what happens, but people usually use it to get into the choice or into their school of choice. So she decides to join the finish, and if she wins, she gets to like go to her dream school, even though she got kicked out. So she joins and finds out it is not what it seemed, and I think that's all I'm gonna say because I do think this is best to go in blind. The only thing that really frustrated me about this book was she was always talking about how she's not like the other people because she doesn't have the money that they have, and she's always complaining about she lives in the suburbs and she has to shop at Bath and Body Works. I'm like, girl, I can't even afford a house. Quit complaining about money. But I do see how it would be hard to go to a school full of millionaires when you're just like middle class. But that was the only part that I was just like, come on, girl, you are not poor. But I loved this a lot. I am actually going to be posting a video with my thoughts on this because I read it in a vlog. So you'll see more, but I did give this 4.5 stars. I'm pretty obsessed with it. All right, so these were the 10 books that I read in November. Again, such an incredible reading month. I think only one of these books I didn't really like. So that is very successful in my eyes. Thank you so much for watching. If you read any of these books and wanted to like talk about them with me, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section. Anyways, I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.